How's that? Okay. Yeah, so I have something in mind that I want to discuss. It's not really about the environment, but it has to deal with our own self, how we deal with the world around us, and my own feelings of like waves of rising, say, in spirit, and then diminishment. And for me, quite often, my rising in spirit comes from being in wild areas, we'll say, okay, like the woods or prairies or mountains, whatever. But what I want to relate it to, because if I can relate everything to kendo, I will. This is a long-established habit of mine. But this year, Laurent and I, who both practice at Lana Kendo, we're both challenging for Yondan in Kendo in a month or so. And Yondan is fourth dan. In Kendo, we don't have belts, really. We have cues and dan grades. And like karate has dan grades too. And a dan grade is what they call black belt level thing. So, and the black belt level goes from first dan up to 8th dan. And the Q level, which is what would be the colored belts in other martial arts, goes from 10th Q up to 1st Q. Anyway, but in the Yondan exam, we have written questions. This is the first written part of the exam I'll ever have done, because my third dan that I did quite a long time ago, back then there was no written exam, at least for those lower dan levels. I don't know about maybe the highers. I'm sure like 7th and 8th that there's essay questions even back then, but I'm not sure. But anyway, but here's the one that I wanted to talk about that relates to the rising and diminishment, and maybe like the rhythm and pattern of that, external influences, things like that. Anyway, it's called Shikai. And one of the questions is, explain Shikai. And Shikai is often referred in English as the four sicknesses, right? They're all related, or what do they say now again? Intersectional. I don't know, I can't, anyway, whatever. We're not going to get into that business again. I decided to leave all that new speak behind. Anyway, so Shikai consists of these elements. Kyo, which is surprise. Ku, please forgive me if my Japanese pronunciation is crappy, because I'm sure it is not correct. Ku is fear. Gi is doubt. And waku is confusion or being disturbed, say, So what's been interesting is, of course, I've been thinking about the question because it's part of our exam, Been thinking about it for a long time, but it's kind of opportune for my part, because there's something in my life, I guess, and the world around me that I'm perceiving that somehow relates to these four sicknesses. And it's hard to know how much of this is fueled by social media. A lot of it is, I imagine, but there's also bigger things going on, I think, in the world at large. Seems to be a lot of polarization. And I think, okay, so in the this means now I'm kind of stuck. What to say? But let's say in the context of kendo. So these four the shikai are things that we have to have to deal with, right? And have to figure out how to get through and deal with them maybe I wonder if it connects with the Buddhist idea of what's the word? Not disconnection? Not disconnection. That's not right. Oh, shoot, it'll come to me. But the idea of not being, of keeping not getting too pulled into something, right? Not getting pulled into the spin and things. Like in kendo for me, like fear is really not an issue for me. Like I'm not afraid. I mean, they all work together, right? But I would put fear for me at the bottom. Like, what am I going to be afraid of, right? Like I've hunted deer and slit their throat and watched it, you know, and went 3 years on a long ride in bear and cougar country and anyway, whatever. And I've been doing solo trips since I was a teenager in the wilderness, right? So anyway, so that's my rationale for thinking, yeah, fear's not that so high for me. But in kendo, for me, the thing that I always have to work with is doubt, which could extend to like belief in my own self and in turn abilities, I suppose, right? And from a purely physical, technical standpoint, but definitely on an internal spirit level, you know, ki level. That's always been my struggle. But I'm conscious of it and work with that, right? Can do that through I'm not a big meditator, but certainly can do it through meditation. Like I have sort of meditative type practices. It's just not, I just don't sit and meditate much. Anyway, like this is a meditation for me when I go walking in the woods. And maybe these talks too, I'm not sure about that. I'm not sure if that's just a big ego thing or not. I kind of think or hope not, but it might be part of it. So fear, doubt for me is something I have to deal with a lot. Surprise. What's in there? And confusion. Okay, here's the list for me. I would put gi, doubt, then waku, confusion, then kyo, surprise, and then at the bottom, ku, fear. That's how I would put my relationship to it. Yeah. For what it's worth. Okay, I got 2 bottles filled. Let's have a drink of water. But the way it relates to me is, like I know this one friend of mine got kind of, someone was really mean to her. Kind of mean girl is a phrase. So I guess I have a sense of what that means. But and how do you deal with that, right? If say someone just goes yeah to you, right? Says something basically really off from sideways, mean and without any justification. You know what I mean? Just out of nowhere, basically. That's happened to me a lot of times. It can be quite devastating, actually, that sort of thing, because it really quite often can take you by surprise. Kyo. So in that context, by meditating on these ideas of Shikai, we can have an understanding both of our reaction to it, right? Like how we respond. So if I respond in fear to something like that, I also have to understand, that's my, this is like primal response, but I also have to try and override that to look clearly at what's happening, right? And in my opinion, and generally speaking, of course there are exceptions, but when that sort of thing happens, for me, it's really a reflection of the person doing the attack, right? So, like you know, on YouTube and Facebook, you see some crazy stuff from people just doing outlandish, racist, or all kinds of weird outbursts, like just beyond belief, right? And when I see that, like everyone's outraged. And it's like, yeah, I'm going to be outraged because it's terrible. But on the other hand, we have to look at that person so with such vehemence going blah, and wonder what's going on in their life to create that just with some little trigger, as they say nowadays. This little trigger of something. Like there was a woman, it's Canadian actually. Anyway, happens in Canada too. A woman and some people, I guess they were Chinese speaking, working at a shop. And she just went on a rant about they should speak English in Canada, because that's what we speak. It's like, well, you could make an argument, like, well, we also speak French. And also we also speak Inuktitut, Cree, Ojibwe, Blackfoot, Squamish. Do you know what I mean? Like there's a million languages in Canada. And Canadians speak Chinese too, as it turns out. And lots of other language, because people come from other places, right? Anyway, so that was a great example, because when I see that, I'm like, oh, there's something really going wrong in this woman's life, right? So and this is maybe I'm not a Buddhist practitioner, so I'm not a scholar or anything. I don't have a really deep understanding, but I do talk with my friend Gung about it quite a bit, and so to me, this whatever's behind an outburst or expression like that, there's something else going on. I mean, who knows? It could be karma, or it could be all kinds of things. But for certain, there's something going on, say, in that woman's personal life that's sent her completely off the edge, right? Because that's not normal behavior, outbursts like that. It's just not normal. There's something else going on. Who can say? So it kind of, and this is where I think maybe the Buddhist connection comes in, is that that woman, although you need to protect yourself and, suss out the situation, maybe that woman also deserves some compassion, because there's, in that, like I said, in that situation, something going on, right? So, let's see now, where can I take it from here? I want to talk about the whole idea of triggering and safe spacing that's going around, especially in universities and stuff. Some universities, apparently. But I guess I want to talk about the my own experience. This is my own experience of a diminishment of spirit and a rise of spirit. On a really general sense, if I'm in a situation like we're at right now, I can feel my spirit rise, right? I'm not going to say I feel powerful. That's not really quite it. It's more, I've always felt like being in the wilderness is like, makes my spirit feel full and big. But part of that is that I'm a small being within this massive, even in this small area around me, this massive diversity of life, like a bursting of life, even nowadays in our diminished times, right? Our times when various living things are diminishing. That's how I feel. And when I'm in a city too long, I just start diminishing. I just start, I can feel everything come down, right? Collapse down. And that's why I try to spend as much time in wild areas as I can, and always have, ever since I was young. Not just teenager, right? Young. Anyway, and okay, for me, I think that's the natural state of a human being. I can't help but say that. I know it's just my perspective, but I also think that, for most of our human lives, that's how we have lived, This modern city thing is new. A few hundred years. Well, anyway. So one aspect about living in a place like this is, I think you have to have your senses awake as much as possible, right? We have to be aware of what's around us, just on a very practical level, right? Like if you're walking on the forest here, you need to keep your eyes open for snakes and things, right? And there's big animals too here, but mostly stuff like snakes and tree limbs falling and stuff like that. So it really demands a really open. Our senses need to be open to live in this environment well, and that's a great way to be. I think it's a great way to live life. But for me in the city, I need to create lots of blocks, right? And that's hard to do when you don't want to do that. It's hard to, okay, I'm going to put up these shields everywhere I go, right? But also, even in a city, like I'm going to go to Bangkok in December to do this grading and tournament and stuff. Like, I know I'm going to do that, but at the same time, there's lots of things to also be aware of and absorb really beautiful things. So I find I have to try and keep a balance. So part of that is I'll tuck myself away for a while just to decompress and then head out into the excitement of the city. Because Bangkok is a pretty exciting city. It's fun, actually. Anyway, so it's feeling a little bit too polarized as concepts. They're much more integrated and overlapping, in reality for me. But maybe that gives a sense of what I'm getting at. So, what do you do if feeling diminished? I think the Shikai in this understanding and a bit of a separation from the inner feelings that you're feeling, you go, okay, like when I was just in the city on Wednesday and we went out for a beer after, and there's a lot of noise and a lot of things to be looking at. And John A. Livingston said it really beautifully. One thing about, he was talking in the 90s, early 90s. He was saying, the way he puts it is like, do-gooders like to come down to the downtown core and say, oh, the kids and stuff are overwhelmed and completely overwhelmed with stimulation. And his point was, actually, in a sense, their stimulation is undernourished in the extreme. In that, the stimulation's pretty much all coming from one source, right? I mean, you might have a few trees in here, but everything's of a human creation in that kind of environment, right? That was his point. So I think that, like for me, what I do, even though I'm sensing the feeling of my spirit being pushed down, I also know that this is just part of a rising and falling thing. So I have to keep a kind of a distance from it and understand, oh, this is what's happening here. And I know why it's happening, because at this point, almost 62 years, I know how this works, right? It doesn't really come as a surprise. Yeah. So I guess it's part of it. It's tricky stuff, eh? Like for the Shikai description, it's like basically one paragraph. But you could write a small or even a large book on just the concept of Shikai and how it relates to us in our lives and stuff. Yeah. And let's see if I 20 minutes already. Okay. Well, maybe I want to somehow tie it into, like, there's been so much flurry going on especially in the English-speaking world, like Canada, States, wherever, England. And the recent one was, I need some more water maybe. The recent one was in Toronto with this Meghan Murphy talk. They created quite the thing, eh? Like, people wanted to stop her from speaking. Imagine that. My first thought, I've talked about it a bit. Anyway, my first thought is about what are you talking about? Is your life this is me being kind of, like, is your existence so frail that you can't even listen to one person speak about something you don't disagree with? It's like, okay, well, it's just her opinion. Whatever. Best water in the world. But I think that there's a lot of that kind of thing going on now. And people looking for something to be outraged about, to just throw themselves into, to not be conscious of what's going on around them, really. I'm sure that most of those people would disagree with me, and that's fine. Like, I think they're not being aware, and they're probably thinking they're being super aware. So I don't know. I don't know what's the truth there, but my perception is that there's something underlying this whole current trend to outrage, to calling out people, to shutting down people. What do they call it? Cancel culture. They're just shutting down people. Like Megan Murphy's been booted off Twitter. I mean, Twitter, I can't stand it. I mean, I don't spend any time on it, but from what I can see, ugh, what a mess. Anyway, but that's her business. Someone booted her off, got her booted off for probably more or less stupid reasons, I'd say. Yeah, so to me, this is all this internal, messy thing going on with no Shikai awareness. That's why I always think everyone should learn kendo. Help in their life. Kendo is life, as is often said, right? And this is why people will say, oh, kendo is life. Because so much of the things we have to deal with on a really direct level, right? We're fighting each other, you could say. We're dealing with fear and confusion, waku, gi, ku, all these things, right? On a really direct level, right? And so at that level, I'm not saying it's easy to deal with, but it's easy to recognize that this is what's going on. And then what you can do is you can take these elements that spin within us, and then the desire to pull away from those four sicknesses and try to look at it as clearly as possible, right? That's where you can put into your daily life, especially this day and age. Anyway, I'm gonna stop now, and I'll probably do a little filming while I'm walking. It's such a lovely day. Okay, we're walking. Got our water. Gave our thanks for the water, as always. What do I got here? Okay, we're good to go. Look at that, eh? Oof. Just stunning. We've had overcast weather. It is that today. It's a bit of blue sky and a bit of cloud. Might rain, but it might not. I'll just tighten that up. Yeah. Anyway, so there you go, Shikai. I'm going to swivel out. You can have a look at the forest. Thinking on the thing of, feeling of lowering of spirit, a diminishment of spirit. It's important to recognize that, I think. I'm just doing little thought experiences. Or, as Su Chang'an says, I'm doing a bit of Uma Maybe I'll explain what Uma is in the next video. Oh, I'm gonna tell you now. But Sicheng is laughing right now. Sicheng is one of the people that watches these videos. He's a really close friend. Uma means out of my ass. Speaking Uma. It's important when things happen that we acknowledge, I think this is the case, Uma, that it's important to acknowledge that we're feeling that. It's not good enough to say, no, you're awesome, right? Even if you are awesome, just saying to someone, no, you're awesome. It's like, yeah, well, thanks for that, but not really helping. Well, maybe it does help. I guess it helps. It's nice to be told you're awesome, right? But on the bigger sense, there's more to it, maybe, I think. Anyway, and I think that acknowledging your weakening I'm not gonna pussyfoot around it. I think it's vitally important. I was gonna say, well, it might be an important aspect. No, I think it's completely vitally essential when you're in a weak state to recognize first and foremost that, oh, I'm in a weakened state here. I'm speaking on sort of kind of deep spirit levels, I guess, but this could be physical as well. Like there's some days when, like some of these water walks, sometimes I go up for a walk and I didn't sleep well, or I'm tired, or not physically strong that day, right? Because I find that the thing I find most about getting a little older is not so much that I'm weaker, but just that the fluctuations between strength and weakness are wider, if I can put it that way. That's how I'm finding it. So if you're physically weaker and going up like I am now on slippery, steep, muddy trails with snakes and things, what you need to do is understand, oh, I'm really weak today. I need to be a little more careful. When I'm like that, I'm gonna walk a little more slowly. You don't want to be stiff, of course, in your carefulness, but walk a little bit slowly. I'll open my eyes consciously more, thinking that if I'm weaker, that my awareness could well be lessened as well. So I need to boost that to be aware. So like right now, I'm actually in really good shape. I walked up, wasn't heavy breathing, nothing. Some days I come up here, I'm like, oh Jesus. But today I'm in good shape. But the trails are slippery and there's wet leaves and things aren't drying out quite as fast because it's cooler right now, right? We're getting to the cool season. So anyway, yeah, there's that. So I think that it's really important to acknowledge that. The other thing I'm wanting to touch on, and I might even comment on my friend's post, I kind of wanted to stop doing that. Anyway, on certain subjects I'm not doing it anymore, but maybe I could on this, because if it has something to do with kendo, then I'm more than happy to spurt out my opinion. And that is, what part? We have to look at it carefully. We have to think, I believe, of course, this is where I'm thinking, and I'm still in Uma mode. When an outburst occurs to us, what part did we play in that outburst, right? Something happened. Say if someone started yelling at me and saying abusive things, sure, that person's a jerk for doing it. And my pondering of, I wonder what part I played in that. Doesn't diminish, slippery. Don't want to fall with this pack on. What part did I play in that outburst, eh? Maybe none. maybe none at all. Maybe it was purely random. I wonder though how often that is. Even in a tiny, tiny way. What is it that I did that made her or him go boom, right? Was it something I said? Of course, we don't have control over how someone responds to what we say necessarily, but that doesn't mean it can't also be a part of that conversation, or if we want to put it that way. Could it have been something I was wearing? Maybe it was my hair. Or, like in that case, with the woman yelling at the Chinese people speaking Chinese to each other, it seems pretty obvious that it was them speaking Chinese to each other, right? That's not a very subtle situation. It was pretty clear that was going on. But in other situations, I think it's worthwhile to ponder this, right? I really, really think that it's not to excuse the behavior. I think that it can help us get over it, right? To look at it from all possible sides, right? Because one thing I think we really want to avoid is to step into the victim's shoes, right? Oh, this person attacked me. I'm a victim. That's a big simplification. And, I'm thinking of my friend's post, but I'm not thinking of her there. She's not a victim type, I don't think. Anyway, but I think we want to avoid that, right? That's not a very good position to be in. And that's a definite diminished position to be in. If you're a perpetual victim, it's going to take you a long time to pull out of that one, I think, right? Even in really horrendous situations, what part did we play? I don't know. I think that's where the interesting dialogue is in all this stuff. And I think that's where it connects with the outrage culture, right? Again, simplifying it all. But like with the Megan Murphy thing is, it's an insect. She was the evil one, and all the people protesting were righteous goodness. Pretty clear. Some people were saying, I hope you die and you should be killed. Someone said that to a woman walking out. Something like that. I mean, Jesus Christ. So, to me, that is a mob. And also a mob situation is never, I don't like that stuff. But here's a mob of victims. They're being oppressed by one little old woman, Megan Murphy. Young even, she's not even that old, right? There's stuff in this, right? I think, and anyway, I'm not going to answer it today, that's for sure. Okay, I want to finish off on one idea that's been pondering in my head for quite a long time, especially in more recent years with this upswell of social justice things. It's something about wanting to define things, right? Uneasy with letting a mystery be, as Iris DeMent so beautifully sang about. Let the mystery be. Seems like there's a resistance to just allowing a mystery to be, to not know what the hell's going on, right? So everyone wants to define things. Everyone wants to define far end, say, gender things, right? So everyone's like, oh, well, I'm this, I'm that, I'm that. I'm this pronoun, I'm gender neutral, I'm gender binary, non-binary, right? Or whatever, it's fine. Whatever you do, that's fine. I'm not dissing that. I'm just saying it's interesting to watch, right? So I'm this, I'm that. This is what really bothers me a lot about this whole discourse, is I'm this. As a blah blah, I think blah blah. This is rampant. And that's way more frightening to me than some nebulous alt-right thing. Although there's weird things going on in both the right and the left, right? And to me, the dangers of that stuff is authoritarianism on both ends. The left is at least in the same situation to me, and maybe more risky. I'm not sure about that, but my sense is. Anyway, maybe this is enough, right? Blah, 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 just going on and on. I'm sure that I'm no clearer speaking today for my Thai friends than... Anyway, I just hope everyone's doing great. Catch you later. Catch you on the flip side. Probably the next water walk, in a week or so, I'll do another one. So, alaposhen, ciao. Hope everyone's doing great, and sawadee ka from Mae Kampong, Thailand.